I need two people to let me know that you guys can see the screen.
Oh
Yep.
yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. All right. Welcome this morning to the Black Gold Nation's Cinematic Connections for Revolutionary Change, our bi-weekly movie review. This is, at least we hope it is, an engaging, enlightening, and entertaining assessment of movies as it relates to the forward progress of Black people in America, Africa, and the diaspora. What is the Black Gold Nation movement? The Black Gold Nation movement is an international organization that seeks to liberate and save Black people by establishing our own towns, that should be plural, I apologize, and or cities, whereby we control the environment to make our people bigger, better, and stronger. This is probably a perfect description, especially given the movies that we've been looking at as of late. We believe in this movement that if we don't control the environment, we are going to continue to lose, period. If we can't control all of the systems within that environment, then we will always find ourselves on the bottom, we Black people, of that system. So if we don't control the educational system, the agricultural system, the economic system, the political system, the spiritual systems, anytime we allow other people to control our entire environment or specific areas of that environment, we will either always lose completely, or we will find ourselves on the bottom of those systems within that environment. So since we don't want to continue to lose, and we don't want to be on the bottom of anybody's system, we believe that Black people absolutely must be in control of it, and we need to run every aspect of it. It's not a matter of if we can, because we've done it multiple times before in this country, at least 200 times actually, and we of course did it before we got here. It's not a matter of if we can, it's that every single time we do it, they seek to destroy it. So we have to make sure that the next time we do it, and there absolutely will be a next time, we have to make sure we put everything in place so that we can protect it, because it's not a matter of if they're going to try to destroy it, but when and how. Why the Black Gold Nation movement came to be, based on the understandings, teachings, practices, and strategies of past and current organizations that our leadership has lived, studied, and are taught, and the need to continue doing. We build upon those successes, minus the mistakes, to provide our people solutions that work now to implement a 100-year plan to build power. So we believe that all of those Black people that came before us, all of them were trying to do a very righteous and very necessary thing. But for a number of reasons, all of them failed. That means that that work that they were trying to do, that very righteous and that very necessary work, has to be continued because it is left undone. So it's on us, the adults that see it now in 2021 moving forward, it's on us to pick up the baton and run our leg of the race as best we can after or as we are studying what they did to understand what they got right, to build upon their successes, but also we must study so that we don't make the same mistakes because we don't have that kind of time. And we need to do this as we are implementing a plan to build power for our people. What happens to us happens because we don't have the power to stop it. Black people are behind the eight ball when it comes to everything because we are reactionary to everything. So we don't want to just be the cue ball that hits the eight ball. We want to be the pool stick that hits the cue ball, that hits the eight ball. Then whatever happens after that happens to somebody else. Not because we got lucky, not because white people did us a favor, not because some benefactor gave us some nonprofit dollars, but because we put that pool stick in place 25, 35, 45, 75 years prior, because we're playing chess, not checkers. And most importantly, in what we're trying to do right now in this movement as it relates to a 100-year plan to build power, we absolutely must train our children to do what we are doing as adults right now so that they can add their plan of 100 years of power development, maintaining, expansion, and holding, so that as a people, we're not behind the eight ball. We are always 100 years out, generation after generation, because we are raising a new kind of Black child to understand that, and we have a new kind of movement that changes everything as it relates to being Black in this country, in Africa, and of course, around the world. So with that, I'm going to turn this thing over to Brother Craig Lee, who's going to lay out this documentary, Plutocracy Part 2.
Good morning. Good morning. Glad that you guys could join us. I know some other people will be coming in, but we'll get started. Since I know for Frances, I just sent a video series to her this morning. So Frances, over the next 3 weeks, will be on Saturday morning viewing part 3, 4, and 5. So you'll be able to those things out as you watch them. And I know Tara is still trying to get through this, and I need to send out to both Tara and to Money the videos from the production company from their actual website, so they'll be able to bypass whatever issues that were going on the YouTube version of whoever posted it, because it was too much powerful information that we have to know every single word that was stated.
That's right.
So since Francis and Tara have not been able to totally view everything, Tamani, give me your overview of what part 2 of Plutocracy means to you. What have you seen thus far?
I think my greatest takeaway was the lengths that those with money are ready, willing, and able to do to maintain their power and to continue to making profit. Like the white guy said in a movie clip that James Earl Jones was in. What James Earl Jones was in. You're not a man. You're not a human. You are a piece of machinery. They do not care about you, your livelihood, your family, none of that. You are a profit center or a way to make profit. I am, I won't say shocked, but it's just eye-opening to not only see and understand what they were doing then, but of course to see the parallels with that same kind of activity now. It may not be as overt, but it is most certainly there as it relates to what corporations are willing to do to maintain and keep profit. And conversely, on the other side of it, the lengths that the union leaders and organizers went to, at least the ones that were serious, to push back, to protect their people, to fight power with power. I thought that was absolutely amazing, and I couldn't help but to think about what you often say, Brother Craig, which is if you don't have a squad that's gonna roll with you, that understands sometimes you might have to get your hands dirty. You're in the wrong game because politics is war, and I was as I'm watching this thing, I told you about the documentary I'm watching now called Killing Jimmy Hoffa.
Yeah.
And looking at how interwoven the political system is with the mob system, with the criminal justice system, with the assassination system. I mean, this thing is an intricate, multi-layered, multi-dimensional web of movement and activity, all of which is about politics, power, and money. And it is also interesting to me that as all of these battles are being waged in America from the beginning to now, the black man is usually at the bottom or not in the picture at all. Because nobody's concerned about the well-being and forward progress of black people. For the most part, it's about maintaining and keeping what we have, not letting other people to get it. So even when people talk about the founding of America, they left England, they didn't want to deal with oppression, blah 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 blah. When they wrote the Constitution, they were not thinking, and black people are equal to. So despite it all, the black man, the black woman, the black child, black people are on the bottom, which is why it's so critically important that we understand how this thing is played, how it works. Not so that we can discriminate against other people, but so we can get our own house right, help them get their house right. So as a grassroots movement, which is where most people exist anyway, we can make some things happen on a completely different level.
All right, copacetic.
Craig, can I say one thing?
Exactly.
What I think is also important that y'all have to tie in is the fourth industrial revolution.
Mm-hmm.
And this whole new switch where we're going to move to autonomous communities. So, for example, the programming of robots and algorithms will
Mm-hmm.
subliminally keep the oppression a part of the system. But what's going to happen is we're going to be completely annihilated and left out of an entire system because of machine learning and the fact that our people don't own anything now. They won't own anything when we switch to this new system. So power will escalate. We will have trillionaires, billionaires, millionaires, and then poverty.
Yeah.
And what we have to understand, this new rollout will happen this decade, but our people are sleeping and
Yeah.
they don't have a clue what's about to come to them. Thank you.
Francis, and ironically, I was about to call on you um, before I got into the film for that very analysis. So I'm glad that you put that forward. And ironically, Francis, this is in the film
Hmm.
from the transition from the agrarian economy into the
Hmm.
industrial economy that you're just referencing, which that industrial now elevates into the technological
Right.
information age that we're in, but it's still all a part of industry, uh,
Hmm.
industrialization from science, technology, engineering, arts, and math.
Correct.
And so I'm glad that you brought that in because I was going to call on you for that. That's
Yeah.
why when I thought about this morning, I said I gotta get Francis in on this discussion. And ironically, I remember when I met Tyra last year at homecoming, but in 2019, Francis, we met at homecoming, and I remember in people learning or trying to learn who the other person is, the question always comes up, what do you do from an occupational standpoint? And being in this game as a corporate grassroots revolutionary over the past 25 years, Tamani Francis, it is a strange question for me to answer now. When I was before I came into this, it was an easy question to answer because, oh, what do you do? I'm a pharmaceutical sales rep. I'm a municipal bond broker.
Right.
So now when somebody asks me that, as Tara had asked me that question, it's like, shit, I'm so many goddamn things. What do I really tell you? And I know, and I say this as I get ready to get into the film. I say this in reference to the documentary of Plutocracy, that I learned this game as I was going through the corporate process, but the creator had a different plan for me to really get into the true mix of what this thing really was all about. And of course, had I been born into the bloodline birth is cool, but had I been born under a different parental structure, whether it be my mom or my father, with entrepreneurship, trust me, I would have gotten to where I'm at now much earlier because my mind was already primed to understand architecture, engineering, entrepreneurship, but it was never put together on that level. But understanding where I'm at now, almost 26 years since leaving corporate America, I've spent more time as a corporate cultural social entrepreneur than I did as a corporate executive. So it's good for me to be able to help Taro now, as she is still in corporate, and most of our people will still be in some type of occupational endeavor, employment-wise, with some corporation on some level, so that we can now, come up with an effective game plan to tap into the resources that we need to take over these various municipalities throughout the country. And Frances works with me closely on that because she gets it, she knows it. The governmental politics side, the economic side, the finance. So that's why we collaborate so well together. Um, Plutocracy too starts out with a powerful, powerful quote. And when you get into these fields, and Tamani figured it out after looking at the first one, Francis, when you look at when the film first starts, hell, you gonna think you're looking at the goddamn film, but the first like 5, damn near 10 minutes of the film is just the intro.
Yeah, they're setting you up, right?
And they setting you up to let you know how much in-depth information that they are going to get into in the film. And I'm telling you, these white folks tie the information together. They tie it together, and they do such a great job of it that they give you so much information that you can now go and start to research the various people who were making things happen, back in the 1800s, 1700s, because this labor thing beyond chattel slavery, which is the most important labor analysis that we need to look at and understand, which we really do not. This labor thing crosses ethnic lines because these crackers don't give a damn, but they're so clever in how they're able to manipulate white folks. But part two starts out with a powerful quote from this white female. They called her Mother Jones, and she was an American labor activist. And this was said in 1902. This is what she said. She says, my friend, it is solidarity of labor we want. We must be together. Our masters are joined together, and we must do the same thing. Our masters are joined together, and we must do the same thing. And when she says our masters, she's talking about what I define as the architects, engineers, and managers of the philosophy, system, and game of capitalistic white supremacy. So my first question of the day is, how are the masters, or as I say, architects, engineers, and managers, how are these entities joined together? What joins them together as it relates to their diabolical agenda to oppress grassroots people?
It would have to be initially their philosophy.
Exactly.
What they think about how this thing is supposed to run, how it was originally set up. And it's interesting when you get further into it, they talk about where life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness comes from and how it was changed.
Changed into from property.
Right. So the way they think is the tie that binds, and their belief system.
And so philosophy, anybody else?
Well,
I mean, I think just a matter of power. I mean, the fact that they are the top 1% and they want to maintain that power by any means necessary. Whenever I think of by any means necessary, I always think of Malcolm X, but shit,
right?
He ain't come up with that.
Like I said, they mean it.
Yeah, I mean, they would go to any length to, no fear, they would go to any length to get and maintain what they want, period. Just by any means necessary, which was amazing.
All right, Francis.
And also they have a long game, whereas ordinary people have a short game.
Yeah.
They have a long-term gain. And I look at how they set out planning, implementation, and they look at things differently than the average person. One, they have the resources, but two, they take advantage. COVID allowed them to speed up now, the fourth industrial revolution. COVID allowed them to lock us down in a way where we became a little bit helpless, or it's like we got hit with something out the blue because, again, we don't play the long game. We're short-term thinkers, short-term believers, um, and they're the masters of distraction. And what happens is we we're so emotional that they just know. It's like a puppeteer and a puppet. They're the masters of illusion. And until we really look deep down to understand what's the underlying effects of everything, it's just going to take us a while. But we have to play a long game. We can't play a short-term game.
Exactly.
We got to stop playing marbles while they're playing chess. And
Correct.
yeah, chess is most certainly a long term game.
So, so all of you guys are definitely in the ball game, and y'all hit on some good points. But the number one thing that I want you to take away from how our masters are joined together, the number one thing that joins them together, that produces philosophy, that produces beliefs, that produces the objectivity of the long game, that produces the power that Tyra talked about, is culture. See, all of that comes from culture. And culture, that's why I use the term right culture, because culture in and of itself is not ethical. Culture in and of itself is not infallible. Culture in and of itself is not righteous, because culture can be negative, it can be oppressive, but it stems from the connection of a group of people of the same ethnic origin. And that's the number one thing that bound them together. And within that cultural group, there was some enlightenment that came to a small amount of people. And this didn't start with Europeans. And this is what I said on this past Thursday with the Revolutionary Code. This started in Africa. And I figured it out. Because I was thinking, I was like, how did all of this shit start? And it started with our people, because we're the originals. We're the founders of all civilizations. So that means we found this shit that is good, and we found it and created shit that is bad. And so I said, oh, I get it. I know how all of this shit started. Some cats like myself and Tamani were sitting in the goddamn village one day, and we up here thinking about how we're going to improve the water delivery for the goddamn village, how we're going to improve the goddamn, making it more cool, improving the functionality of our village. And we looking around while we thinking and strategizing and shit, and goddamn these other Negro males, they just running around butt naked and shit and laughing and joking and hard and all this bullshit. And guess what? Me and Tamani, no matter how intelligent we are, and no matter what we're trying to do to progress the village, we got to do the same menial labor that the goddamn non-thinkers had to do. We got to get the goddamn water, go walk 5 miles, bring these goddamn pails back, and we see they happy ass. They ain't doing no research, no study, no analysis. And me and Tamani like, God damn, Tamani, bruh, we got to make them do the work for us. So now we start to figure out ways of manipulating the individuals to do the stuff that we don't want to do, so that we can now do those particular things that we say is going to advance the village. And that's how this thing is actually started, because no matter who you were in a tribe, you still had to do those particular chores in order to make your life maneuver on a daily basis. You still had to hunt for food. You still had to go fetch water because there was no damn faucets and all that kind of shit going on at the time. And so this started with us. What the white people have done in their evil and their nature, they just took it to a whole nother goddamn level. And they figured out because they don't want to do no menial labor, no blue collar work. So this is where this starts. And so when you remove spirituality and right culture from the equation, and now you don't have any value on the person who does the menial labor, shit, I mean, this thing just now takes on a life of its own. So here's a question I have for you guys to prove the point. Here's a question, and I ask people this question all the time. How does a individual become a sanitation worker? How does a person become a sanitation
worker? I know the answer, so I'm not gonna say anything.
All right. France, how does a person become a sanitation?
They're the ones that are bullshitting, playing around, kicking dirt, and not contributing as they're growing up. The ones that are, in the back of the classroom, not paying attention, skipping school, and by default, that's where they end up if they want to earn a living.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Francis, same thing.
Yep. It's whatever's left.
Exactly.
That's what it is.
And Tara hit on that term by default.
Mm-hmm.
No child, and Francis has been an educator, and she can tell you this. Ain't no child in the history of this goddamn country ever said in elementary, junior high, or high school, when I grow up, I want to pick trash. or I want to wash dishes at a restaurant. Or I want to work at the stinky water treatment facility. Or I want to pick up dog shit for a living. Nobody says that. So how do those jobs get filled? People fall into those jobs. But guess what? Those jobs are mandatory.
Mm-hmm. Somebody got to do it.
What would happen if we didn't have sanitation workers?
You're right. Yeah, I mean, we would be stinking. Everything would be just awful.
We'd have a lot of burnt grass.
Third world.
What would happen? What would happen if you didn't have people working in the stinky water treatment plant?
That's true. You're right.
What would happen if you didn't have people who wash dishes at a restaurant?
Yeah.
What would happen in all of these particular positions? So look at what the crackers have done. Because capitalism, and that's why I sent you information to money on Adam Smith. So we got to study the mindset of where these crackers are at, because capitalism is a system that is predicated, rooted in the creation, maintenance, and expansion of a permanent underclass. Now, most people believe that if, and this is the question I asked one of my good partners in education. I said, since you like education, Dr. Hicks, I said, I know you'll really like this because you want to improve all schools, right? And he said, yeah, I do. I said, put on your individualistic, idealistic, romantic hat. And I say, we're gonna go down a little path right quick. Let's imagine that there are no failing schools in America. I said, would that be a good thing? He said, hell yeah. I say, okay, so all of those schools, ain't nobody failing. All of them are blue ribbon schools. I'm talking about no matter your poverty level, that don't even matter. Great school, is that a great thing? Yeah. I say, ain't nobody dropping out of school, everybody making straight A's. Would that be a good thing? Yeah. Everybody's getting a perfect score on the ACT and SAT. Would that be a good thing? Yeah.
Highly educated sanitation workers.
So now the question becomes, who's going to pick the trash? Exactly, Tyra. Ain't nobody going to want to pick the trash because your so-called education bypasses you from that endeavor.
Correct. That goes to the point of this MMT, or universal basic income. The countries are now printing money to give to everybody to alleviate poverty. The Bible speaks of the poor will be among you. So you're never going to eradicate poverty.
Exactly.
No matter how much money you print, you
Exactly.
won't eradicate it. But the game plan is to put money in everybody's hand. Just print, 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 and what's going to happen? They still won't eradicate poverty.
You still ain't gonna eradicate, because in order to
It's a
eradicate
mindset.
exactly.
That's right. That's right. It's mindset. Right.
And here's the thing. You can't force a person to change his or her mindset that has now been indoctrinated in them from their parents, from their grandparents, from their school, from their church, from the crack of society. You can't force that. So poverty will always be here, and it's not a functionality of printing the money or whatever currency you have, like Francis is saying, because it's a mindset shift. Your actual wealth is not in the goddamn money. Yes, it is, Craig. No, it's not. Yes, it is, Craig. No, it's not. How you gonna tell me that the money ain't the value? Nigga, because the mind of an entrepreneur created the goddamn money.
That's right. And they don't understand that. And it's just like the garbage man by default. By default, a lot of people are stuck in poverty.
Exactly.
Because why? They don't want to do what it takes to produce or create. We were created to produce. We were not created to sit there and just let somebody send you a check in the mail. It just wasn't designed that way.
But check it out, Francis. The flip side of that is what I just asked. If all of the schools were so-called properly educating the children, everybody was getting straight A's, everybody's smart, everybody's reading books. So now the question becomes, who picks the damn trash? Because now with the intelligence, you're not going to want to pick the trash, because these are going to be the low-end jobs, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
So in order to have a capitalistic system, and since it's predicated on the creation, maintenance, and expansion of a permanent underclass, you got to create this chasm to give the illusion to the people who are willing to go to college, okay? Mm-hmm. You got to give them the illusion that if you just do these things, you're going to be successful. Well, guess what we know? That's a goddamn lie.
Right, it is. Because it don't work that way. It doesn't work that way.
Okay.
Right.
Because in economics, there's a concept called scarcity of resources. There is not an infinite amount of jobs. There is an infinite amount of resources. Right. So you got to create a situation in a capitalistic system now, because that's based on inequitable sharing of resources, okay, in a capitalistic system. So within that particular system, you got to create a situation where some people are allowed to tap in to a little bit more resources than the masses. And now you create the conflict, and hell, we're going to make off with every goddamn thing, because they don't even know that money ain't real any goddamn way.
That's right. That's right. You're right.
The only reason that silver, gold, platinum, cryptocurrency, the only reason that any of this stuff has value is based on the perception that is created by the architects, the engineers, and the managers of the system.
Correct.
And that's why it's so critically important that a new system is created whereby your value is your humanity. Your value is who you are and what you bring to the table, your mind, your spirit, your soul, your essence. And by creating that new system, you know, we can eliminate the fundamental predatory aspects of capitalism, because we're not to capitalize on you and make money off of you. We're trying to make you a better person.
Exactly. And I wouldn't have any problem with a universal income if it's universal goddamn work based on what you do.
That's right.
Right, but it's not going to be, and you already know.
Yeah.
Exactly, because you can't force these people to go to work. So at the end of the day, this is the dilemma as we now move forward to navigate. And these are conversations that the majority of our people have never had in their lives, and it's an unfortunate reality.
And I tell you, Craig, that universal income is going to be an issue for people like you and I, because our people are going to say, struggle for what?
Yeah.
Build for what?
Exactly.
I got my check, and they're not gonna see the negative aspects of what that check is. If you want this check, Negro, you got to take this vaccination.
But here's the number one thing the plutocracy has done. They put people in fear.
Yeah.
See, they use their fear weapon. You know, weapon of mass destruction. They've put the fear game. I mean, I spoke to a group with a so-so this week. They're in fear.
Yeah.
They're in fear, and fear paralyzes people. So what happens is they put them in fear, then they give them comfort by giving them a check to create a sense of security. But what they don't realize is really that check is really nothing, because money, as we know it in the 6 stages, is worth nothing. And when it collapses, then what?
Exactly. It's a cold-blooded game, man. It's a cold-blooded game. It's a gangster game.
Yeah.
And so this again is a conversation. Trust me, Malcolm wasn't having these conversations with no Nation of Islam. You understand? King wasn't having these conversations with his squad. You see, because they bought into the premise of what Dr. Wade Nobles defines as power, which is the ability to define reality and have others respond to your definition as if it were their own. So I had to spend a little bit of time going into that, because that is the central part of this particular film and all of the series that go into Plutocracy. And Tamani asked, who are the plutocrats, or what is Plutocracy? And that is, you know, the group of people who are the architects, engineers, and managers. Well, really, they're the architects and engineers of the system. The managers are the oligarchs and, to some degree, the aristocrats. And they have this thing created, and it is based on what Francis also just talked about, which is fear. And that fear and that individualism is what they can always use, because what they've done, they've locked down all of the land, water, fucking air,
space,
every goddamn thing that's a necessity to live.
Yeah.
They locked that down with an authoritative structure of military, paramilitary, in order to now make you tap into the goddamn system. And if you don't want to tap in, you can just goddamn be homeless, goddamn it.
And the gatekeepers and the enforcers are the micro plutocrats,
Exactly.
micro oligarchs, and micro aristocrats.
Exactly.
And In each ethnic group, right? And because of their desire to either, because identity politics, they're thinking that they are one of them, or their desire to just take care of their own personal space or family. They not only sell out the masses, but they are brutal in their efforts to maintain the order as given to them by the 1%.
Exactly.
And it's interesting to me, Brother Craig, as I'm watching part two. It's funny how they use those that are in power use political power and money to hire people to be violent,
Exactly.
while the people who are targeted for that violence are trying to organize political power to fight back against the violence that's being reaped upon them. So it's like, damn. It's heavy, man. It's heavy.
And that's why when I talk about the 6 pillars of empowerment, you got to start with spirituality and right culture.
Yes, sir.
Because those are the 2 most important human assets that you can have that now will give you insight and vision, purpose in order to, and a blueprint to know how to navigate within this overall game. And without that, you would just get caught up in trying to respond to the power like the anarchists as we get into that. And that's a no-win situation. You're not going to defeat the people with the guns, with your few guns, because they got some serious guns.
Yeah.
But the anarchists played a pivotal role, and they are a piece to the puzzle that we have to analyze in this film. The other thing I want you guys to pay attention to is the term wealth. I really get sick and tired of this goddamn term being thrown out because when people, especially Negroes, when they throw this goddamn term out, wealth, they believe they know what the fuck they're talking about. Right. And again, what does Dr. Wade Nova says? The power is the ability to define reality and have others respond to your definition as if their own. So when we go and look at wealth from Merriam-Webster, number 1, an abundance of valuable material possessions or resources. Number 2, an abundant supply. And then I looked at the etymology. The etymology of it goes back to middle 13th century, the word happiness, also prosperity and abundance of possessions or riches. And it comes from the Middle English word wele, which means well-being. And then you go to a term well, W-E-A-L, and that means Old English well-being, wele or wealth, and the late Old English also welfare, well-being. And so if you're defining wealth, which most Negroes do, Urban League, NAACP, we got to close the wealth gap. How the fuck are you going to close a goddamn division between ethnic groups that's designed by the goddamn system? You see, so it's like to even hear that kind of foolishness and to even hear, owning property is the first step in building wealth. Like, you never own property in America. So all of these things, these are people who are supposed to be highly intelligent and they are supposed to be our leaders. And I'm going to their conferences. Francis has been to their conferences. And I ask in open forum, at what point in time does a person own property in America? Oh, when they pay off their mortgage. Well, you're a goddamn. Nope. You're a goddamn. Because when you pay off your goddamn house, you still got to pay tax.
And then the laws will allow them to eminent domain your shit.
Exactly.
Yeah, they can come back and get it when they want it.
That's
exactly. So stop with all this bullshit that you own land. These crackers have forcibly come and created a system by taking the goddamn land. And that's just a reality. So the real wealth is not goddamn money is not defined by white folks. The real wealth is inside of you.
Right.
It's your spiritual power. It's your mind. It's your health. That's your number one wealth asset. Not no goddamn cryptocurrency. Not no gold, silver, and diamonds. Not no cash reserves. It's your physical health. You say, well, Craig, that's your opinion. No, nigga, that is true. Because guess what? If you were sitting on $2 quadrillion right now, and the creator punched your time clock and said, time up tomorrow, the question is, how much of the $1 trillion, quadrillion dollars, would you be able to negotiate with the creator to have more time?
But see, Craig, you're talking about what's the result of the wisdom that you have within. See, and that's what people don't understand. When you're acquiring those things, it's a result of you had the intelligence inside of you, or the knowledge or the wisdom to know, okay, I better acquire some silver or thing. See, that's a result.
Exactly.
But like you said, the inner being in you, because it's there for people to get, but if they don't have the wisdom, they still ain't gonna have it. You understand what I'm saying? It's just that capitalism made it a metric. You understand? It put them in a rat race to say run behind money or run behind this or run behind that, and that's why they never get out, and that's not why they never understand. It starts inside of them, the treasure, that hidden treasure, which begins inside of them. And that's where your wealth is.
That's where your wealth is at. So we are, and the only way, as I told Tamani, and I tell this to you, Francis, and I tell this to Tyra, and I tell it to anybody else, the thing that Malcolm and the other grassroots revolutionaries never understood, that in order to now solve an issue, you got to go inside of the goddamn problem and extrapolate the goddamn solution. The damn solution is never going to be outside of that which is impacting you. It's going to be on the inside of that. You say, well, Craig, what do you mean? In order to come up with a cure for cancer, in order to come up with a cure for any virus or anything that's poisonous, Tara, you're the pharmacist on the phone. How do you come up with the cure?
You have to go inside the disease. You have to study the disease.
Inside of the damn disease or the virus or the poison is also the goddamn cure.
Yeah, you got to study the people that have it.
So what has happened with our grassroots people? They've looked at capitalism and they say, oh, we got to go to socialism. They don't even know what the fuck capitalism is, but they automatically say we got to leave capitalism. Here's what I tell people. Although capitalism is an evil and wicked system, at capitalism core, there is beauty. Because at the core of capitalism is our African system. Well, what is that? Free enterprise. See, free enterprise is at the core of capitalism. The reason that capitalism is fucked up is not because of free enterprise, meaning Francis comes up with an idea. She gonna goddamn sell grapes, okay? Francis should not be limited in the amount of money that she can earn, currency she can earn in whatever system, just based on, well, Francis, you work somebody over there, they ain't feel like working today, so you got to give them some money. Oh, fuck that. We're not doing that. So Francis has some grapes. She goes and sells grapes. She should make as much money as she wants to make. Okay. Now, me, I'm looking at Francis. Okay, I'm selling some grapes. But her ass is outselling me. I don't like that shit. I don't like Francis. She making more money than me. But Francis is helping everybody, whoop de whoop. So guess what? Here's where capitalism comes in. I want to take over Frances' grape selling. But that's how Frances is making her living. That's how she provided for her family. Fuck that. I'm going to go to her and I'm going to say, Frances, hey, look, I like the fact that you out here selling and shit, but this corner too big for two people. I need your goddamn grape. So how much to buy y'all? No, Craig, this is my business. My grandfather started the business, and I'm gonna keep on rolling. So I make a goddamn another offer. She don't want to roll. Now I got to get like Don Corleone and Godfather. I done made you the offer. Now I got to take your ass out and take your corner.
That's what Walmart did. Well, the Walmart effect. And that's what they did to small rural communities. That's what they did. Mm-hmm.
That's capitalism. Okay. Right. And now when I have somebody kill your ass, then I'm gonna come to your funeral and I'm gonna get some flowers to your family. I'm be like, God damn, we're gonna work hard to find out who did this. Because Frances was my grape selling partner. And I just used to love seeing her smile. This is capitalism. Okay? Yeah. That is the evil nature of white supremacy. That is the evil nature of an individual who does not want to see a collective good going on. But the desire for Frances to sell, she should not be capped. Her earnings should not be capped because she has enough sense to now create something on her own. So at the core of capitalism is free enterprise. And as we go through this film, you should ask yourself, in terms of the laborers, hey man, why won't y'all just go and start your own goddamn business?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And because they don't have control over their mind. All right, now we're just in the introduction.
And you know, Brother Craig, on that point, that's our issue as well as Black people, because we love to talk about shopping Black, buying Black, local economics, but we have and I have to repeatedly say this in our meetings in Houston. People think that Black people don't have money, but they refuse to see that everything that happens in the Black community, all those businesses would not be there if it weren't for Black people having money.
Exactly.
We complain about those businesses, but we don't realize if we redirect that Black foot traffic, we can start our own business just like that one and put it out of business. But because we don't understand, our minds aren't freed because we don't understand that process, we will complain all day long about what someone else has done in our communities with their business, but we would never lift a finger to start our own. And it's wide open to do. We're just not thinking that way, which is a problem.
And what is that a byproduct of? The lack of what?
Spirituality.
And right culture. Yeah. Right. And spirituality, right culture, and education.
Well, I mean, we have 1.7 trillion in consumption spending.
Exactly.
But yet we have a net worth of 1,700. So right there it tells you that once we get it, we give it away.
For instance, the evidence of our economic power is everywhere.
Right.
We just gloss over that shit. Right. And we have yet to really use that, which is a problem.
Well, there's never been a national, until now, what we're doing.
That's right.
There's never been a national game plan to go after 20% of that $1.5 trillion that Frances just referenced.
Yeah.
And until now, you don't hear the goddamn Congressional Black Caucus talking about it. The damn Urban League don't talk about it. The damn NAACP don't talk about it. And both Frances and Taro are members of the two largest Greek letter sororities. They don't talk about the shit. Right. Okay. So this is where we now have to take the mantle, but within our individual rank, before you put forth a national agenda to talk about this with those other entities, we gotta first tap into what to money? The money, status, and materialism.
Yep.
Craig, I just told the Black Susu group that if they could grow Black GDP by 12%, they could transform an entire community. There are 200,000 blacks in Dallas in the southern sector. Okay.
Yeah.
And if they could just take 12%, which is they could transform, create 200 new businesses, which could empower over 2 to 3 million people.
Exactly.
But what happens, Craig? I don't think they don't understand construct,
Yeah.
and so because you don't understand construct, it's it's hard for them to really move that, because guess what? They're narcissists in some sense. People who have the ability to lead the people are narcissistic.
Yeah.
So they have a Nimrod kind of behavior.
Hmm.
So that's what prevents us from really moving, because if you try to move a big group too fast without construct,
Exactly.
that's why we fail. That's where we
Exactly.
fail as a group.
Spirituality and right culture.
Exactly.
Right. Correct.
Great point. And Francis, the reality is they don't even have to grow the GDP by 12%. They just have to redirect 12% of the existing,
That's right.
Right.
and that redirection brings what you just said into the fold, and then you can now have resources in order to expand that GDP. But my objective, as I went through the numbers with money, I'm like, look, man, 20% of $1.5 trillion
Hmm.
is 300 billion.
Right.
Now, that's our goal. That's our goal.
Hmm.
In sales, you have a sales goal.
Correct. Yes.
But then in sales, you also have a success rate.
Correct.
So my success rate is well over 50%, but let's just put it at 50%. 50% of $350 billion, not $300 billion, is 150 billion,
Hmm.
which comes out to be 10% of the 1.5 trillion consumption spending.
Correct. Hmm.
And you can, and Francis will tell you, Brother Tamani, you can go to all 50 states
Hmm.
and all thousands of cities in this country where African descendants are located. And you can look at all of the public and private sector dollars that are targeting the African American consumer, voter, in all 50 states, in every city, in every county. And Francis would tell you that it ain't a goddamn, it ain't a goddamn hundred, it ain't even $10 million.
That's right.
In all 50 states, in all cities combined, that's targeting Black people. That means your state budget, your local budgets, there ain't a good $100 million combined in all of these places. So we're talking about 150 billion, 10%. Brother, it changes the dynamics of every single African descendant in this country by redirecting, having a goal to redirect 20% of those dollars, because right now less than 3% is being spent collectively in our community. So of that 1.5 trillion, less than 3%. So that means if we round it up to 3%, 97% goes outside of our community.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't have the bonding agent to redirect 20%, 10%, 30%. That's where the spirituality, the culture, the education, the economics, the socioeconomics, and the politics. That's where the 6 pillars of empowerment come in. And that's our objective. And you got to do that on a micro level, like Francis is saying, before you focus on a national level, because you got to have a foundation.
Right.
And when the people can see when the people can see the overall counter to this, then they will goddamn move. And we're going to get into that because the anarchists, they focused on the violence of the plutocrats in establishing their capitalistic infrastructure. So they thought they could counter with violence and then ignite a grassroots revolution of violence that goes against the damn plutocrats, but the damn people wouldn't know how to run shit anyway.
Correct.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So you got to learn that particular process, and we got a solution for that. Okay, let me go on and get into hitting these hot buttons. So I want you guys to focus on wealth, understanding that. But at the end of the day, this whole thing, this whole construct in America gets down to labor. However you want to look at it, it's about labor. So one of the other good points that was brought out in the intro was the American industry has the highest level of industrial accidents, fatalities than any other industrialized nation on earth. That's probably changed a little bit over the past 60 years because there's been so much advocacy to do certain things, and that's where public policy comes in at the local, state, and federal level. Because in other countries, some countries do a better job than the United States across the board, but the United States tries to create this illusion they're the end all to be all when it comes to quality of life, and that's a lie. One of the nicknames for the plutocrats, they call them robber barons. Robber baron. So you need to know that term. The graph that they put up, the richest 2%, and this is back in the day, but it's still pretty much the same right now. The richest 2% own 1/3 of the nation's wealth. Is actually worth now. The bottom 40% own no wealth at all. So again, that wealth term was thrown up. Now, as it relates to property, the wealthiest 1% own 51% of all property, while the bottom 44% own only 1.1% property. And like we already said, you never own property in America. All you can do is either invest in it or rent it. And if you invest in it, you get certain privileges versus being a renter. And at one point, the number one privilege that you earn by being an investor in real estate was the right to goddamn vote, which is another reason that any Negro that don't vote, we should beat his ass with a hot goddamn iron. We should burn his ass like Penny used to get burned in Good Times by her goddamn mom. Because there was a time when the only people who could vote, not only did they have to be white males, but they had to goddamn own property. So the majority of damn crackers couldn't even damn vote because they didn't own no damn property. Economist Henry George wrote in 1886, and this is powerful, chattel slavery, listen to this now, chattel slavery may be dead or is dead. I say maybe, but is dead. But industrial slavery, which is the point that Francis made to begin this presentation, remains. Chattel slavery is dead, but industrial slavery remains. Now, at the 250-minute mark is where silence happened, but they were talking about the Pinkerton Detective Agency, and they were used by the plutocrats in order to suppress the labor movement. See, because without the paramilitary agency, the labor would automatically win because there are more broke people than goddamn me rich people. Yep. So the rich people now employ other broke people in order to become security agents against their own relatives. Yep. Okay? And what you do is you don't hire them from the local market because then it'll be too much pressure. You bring them from out of state. So they don't have any personal connection to the people. So when they have to kill their goddamn ass or bust their head or rape them, then they ain't got no issue with that. But it says that they use counterintelligence tactics to defeat the labor movements, infiltration, misinformation, disinformation. That's why I'm always very keen on that, especially as it relates to what we're doing. They started to make some inroads, some of the grassroots labor activists, with a group called the Molly Maguire. This was an Irish secret society of coal miners. So again, this ain't just about black folks against white folks. This has been poor whites against rich whites as well. But you know, the poor whites always lose because they don't understand the goddamn game. Now we get into the film. One of the big things that they talked about is the Pullman strike. Pullman cars. This was actually a white person's name. Pullman, the strike of 1894, that was a very big thing. I'm going to study that. The Pullman strike of 1894. And the federal government stepped in not to defend labor, but to defend the damn corporation. So what does that tell you? The government is a byproduct of the corporate endeavors, and we're going to talk about a quote that gets into that. So Pullman, who owned the Pullman cars, he came up with this technology that allowed people to sleep in trains, and mail was being delivered as well. So the good old boy plutocratic system was able to defeat that labor strike at that particular town. He owned an actual town called Pullman, Illinois, right outside.
Hey, Brother Craig, excuse me. What he did was his lawyer found a way to break the strike by saying that mail is delivered on these Pullman cars, and you can't stop the mail from being delivered. And I am reminded of how a quote unquote good lawyer can be used when I'm watching The Wire. The first episode, because my man Barksdale had that lawyer that you know he paved the way for them to do what they were doing. So having a good lawyer or legal team that understands how this thing is played is also a tool that can and should be used.
That's a very important part that we rock and roll with. But the court system, all of the governmental apparatus is controlled by the plutocrats.
That's right.
That's why you can forget doing shit at the national and state level, and you got to concentrate on the local level first. Then you gain leverage at the state and the federal level for the local municipality that you control. But that's our game. Also, there's a big focus on labor unions. They started the American Railroad Union, Eugene Debs. Then they created the United Union. The one good thing that I loved about the film, it showed that no matter how much violence the plutocrats enacted against these white folks, guess what? They didn't just give up. They just goddamn me created something else.
That's right.
I mean, trust me, I know that people were scared, but they just created something else. And also in that negotiation, Tamani, that you talked about, a big name that was brought in to that, not only with the mail, but it was who? Pillsbury. Because Pillsbury had the damn flour that needs to go outside the country and around the country. And he said, God damn it, y'all got to get this shit over with. Right. Get my goddamn money.
That's right.
Okay. Then at the 14-minute mark, it goes muted again. But they were talking about the federal injunction against the labor strike due to mail being transported on the trains. So the government steps in, shuts that whole things down. Here's another great quote, and this quote is absolutely powerful, because what you see in the union, the white folks, now you got racism, sexism in the union. Yep. So although they need to be bonding against the plutocrats or the crackers, the pork crackers, like, no, we got to keep them niggas down. See?
Right.
So that's why we got to get out of this mindset of this rainbow coalition, we are the world. Even when we are having white allies, Brother Tamani, our job ain't to fight our white allies fight.
That's right. That's right.
You stand up and fight your own goddamn fight.
Right.
Now, when we can unify on some national policy or some state policy, cool.
Yeah.
But other than that, we're not coming to your goddamn neighborhood to fight your fight.
Yeah. We you know, we gonna do our thing. You do your thing. We're gonna show you how to do it because we want you to be successful on the grassroots level. But we are most certainly not trying to be kumbaya. And I was listening to something you said. I'm not sure if it was a recording of the first one that I missed because I was traveling. You said the political statement that people make, no permanent friends, no permanent enemies, just permanent interests. And then when you broke that down, I'm like, well, that makes sense because if you remember the KKK, you are most certainly my permanent enemy. But then you said what makes more sense is that politics makes strings bedfellows.
Exactly.
And we don't get that because we want to love and forgive and kumbaya to a fault. We want to fight everybody else's battles, but because of our own lack of understanding, our own lack of spirituality, our own conditioning, we won't fight our own damn battle.
Exactly.
But we want to get involved with everybody else's thing, you know, which is the problem. But anyway, I just want to make that.
Exactly. All right, so this dude, Frederick Ingalls, in 1893, he had a quote. In the United States, workers are divided into two groups, native born and the foreigner. And the latter in turn into 1, the Irish, 2, German, 3, many small groups, each of which understands only itself.
That's right.
And when they're saying that, they're talking about specific to culture, ethnicity, Czechs, Poles, Italians, Scandinavians, etc. All of them come under the European umbrella. And look at what it says. And then
the blacks. Right, at the bottom.
Now I want y'all to hear this now. This ain't Craig saying this. To form a single workers' party out of these, talking about all these different factions, requires quite unusually powerful incentives. Okay? So you're not just gonna get with some people just because they are of the same skin pigmentation that you are, because there are differences in the mindset. So this is something that we can take from that. Now it's when the brother Brian Jones, they list him as an activist. Everybody want to be a goddamn activist now, but he's more a historian. And he talked about he called it competing impulses, okay? But it's not competing impulses that he's talking about. It's really competing interests. And what he's talking about as it relates to the competing interests, as I redefine what he's saying, it's your individual interest versus collective, okay? And so the collective interests of the union were supposed to include all oppressed people. But see, now you get caught up in your individual interest as it relates to white supremacy racism. And the only thing that can ever eliminate that, which I don't even know if white folks got a spirit, but if they did, is spirituality and right culture. But I question the existence of their goddamn spirit. I think some of them may, but the vast majority of them do not. Brian Jones went on to talk about the significance of the destruction of Reconstruction. This is where we lost it, because those 11 years up to this point in 2021, those 11 years from 1866 to 1877, that's the greatest time period for our ancestors, for our people in this country's history. And that was shut down by both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. The Republican Party was initially the party that was giving us some marginalism, but after everything was said and done, they left us hanging dry because they rolled with their white colleagues. The next big thing happened in Latimer, Pennsylvania. I got to study this. It's was in 1897. This is where they brought in the Pinkerton Security Company Detective Agency, and they murdered 19 unarmed coal miners. They were murdered due to the labor strike. So the goddamn plutocrats like, shit, you don't want to go to work? Okay, we just gonna kill your ass, and you gonna get back to work.
Yeah, and not only are we going to kill you, we're not going to try those that we hire to kill you.
Exactly. I mean,
we're going to give them pardons.
but guess what? Like I just said, they didn't stop.
That's
they
right.
created the United Mine Workers Union.
That's right.
See, if for nothing else, Francis, when you show this to your group that you deal with, they will start to see it ain't no goddamn stopping. Stopping is not an option.
Right.
Even after they done killed your ass, you keep on going. The guy talked about the more. This comes from Karl Marx from the book Wage Labor. His reference on wage labor and capital. He said the more division of labor and the application, and this gets to your point, Francis, about the industrial age and where we're at now, the technology taking the jobs. This is what Karl Marx said. The more division of labor and the application of machinery extends, the more does competition extend among the workers, the more do their wages sink together. The more do their wages sink together. So he's saying that when we're talking about labor and machinery, that you already got physical competition for labor.
Correct.
But now with machinery now competes with the physical labor.
Right. And that's why they're moving guys to a 2-day work week. Now the whole overall goal for the globalists, the plutocrats are globalists, is going to be a 4-day work week, 4-hour work week.
Exactly.
So I've been saying to, as well as you won't have any benefits, anything, but what you have is the opportunity when they need your help to go in there, make a few bucks, and that's it, but no consistency. And so you have to begin to prepare now for these transitions, because that's why the universal basic income is needed, because they know people won't have any jobs per se, or you need to develop entrepreneurship.
Exactly.
Entrepreneurship needs to be the number one thing
That's the number one thing
we look at.
Exactly. That's the number one thing. All right. Then we got into looking at the Chinese Immigration Act. And again, Eugene Debs, who had been a major union organizer, he supported this Chinese Immigration Act before becoming a socialist. And so again, racism was and still is the number one issue that prevents labor unity. That was brought out. That was a very important point that was referenced. Another thing that was brought out that's key in the unions was the class issue inside the unions between skilled labor and unskilled labor. And so you combine that with the racism, the sexism, and also the classism simultaneously. And that's what makes white supremacy so difficult to really understand for people who don't know how to think. They got into a good breakdown of the 13th Amendment, where it allows partial freedom with the exception, no involuntary servitude, with one exception, if your asses have been duly convicted.
Right.
That's bullshit within that overall deal. So that's when they get into the convict leasing program, the book Slavery by Another Name. I suggest that you look at that documentary online and read that book. they brought up a real good thing that happened where white and black labor activists got together in Chattanooga, Tennessee in 1891. I got to research that, but they talked about whites and blacks fighting together against prison labor tactics. So that's something that happened in 1891. Hey, look, this is what Adam Smith, this is why I said to Money, I sent you the information on Adam Smith, and Francis knows to some degree about this. Look at what Adam Smith said. Civil government, so far as it is instituted for the security of property, is in reality instituted for the defense of the rich against the poor.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Of those who have some property against those who have none at all.
Mm-hmm. Right.
That's capitalism, brother. So all of this bullshit that these crazy people be talking about, we need to all come together and get along, and everybody needs they come up. No, sir. Your ass ain't even considered. And that's what that's where we now get into the Declaration of Independence, where they talk about Thomas Jefferson, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And that he took that, a portion of it from the English philosopher John Locke. But like you said, Locke said, he ain't say no life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. He said life, liberty, and the pursuit of goddamn property, goddamn. Right. Because that's the system that the game was built on, and property was important because the original construct of this whole thing throughout the world was based on an agrarian economy for the most part, right?
Correct. Right.
So the more land you had, the more you could farm it, and cows and birds and goddamn fish and all of that kind of shit. That has totally changed. And now it's so interesting, people don't even want to invest or have leverage in property. It's crazy. The white man now controls everything. Of course, they talked about voting was based on property possession. And it used to be in some states, and of course it changed from state to state, but it used to be that you had to have a minimum now of 50 acres just to goddamn vote.
A lot of land.
And your punk ass could be in the projects and vote today, and your punk ass don't even want to vote. That's why I say put their punk ass back on the plantation. Because 50 acres is a lot of goddamn land.
It is.
Okay. Then they got into the literacy test, the poll taxes in order to vote. Even when they eliminated the property foundation to vote, they got into literacy tests, poll taxes, and the first literacy tests were not administered to us, actually administered to the cracker Irish. Okay, so we need to really understand that. And then France, they get into a major situation that happened in Louisiana, which was the Colfax Massacre. And that was all based on voting. The white folks didn't like the way the 1874 governor's race turned out. They blamed Negroes for whatever. And they came down in Colfax and they murdered hundreds of people. And they were, black people were trying to vote, just trying to vote. This was all based on our people's desire to vote and impact the policies that govern their lives. They were killed. That was 1876. And then in Red River Parish, a group that was similar to the KKK, the White League, in 1874, they murdered about 9 white and black voting advocates who had come down here to try to register black folks to vote. Louisiana was about that life, brother. And so they'll kill your ass if you were trying to actually get out here and vote. Then they get into the women's suffrage movement. But yet again, just like with the labor union, what was it played by? White supremacy and racism. So they were pimping the black female, and that's why black females got to get off of this feminism tip and deal with the fact that we got to have a gender component for sisters underneath an umbrella that advocates for African descendants, and that's what we have within the Black Gold Nation. Author Sharon Smith, she said something very important. She says, she lays it all out about the women's suffrage movement being straight bullshit. It was hardcore cracker female racists and the pseudo unity that they had established with the abolitionist movement. That is a very big point that you'll see in the documentary from Sharon Smith. The other big thing that I thought was phenomenal, challenging of the two-party system, brother, this ain't nothing new. People been
That's right.
over 100 years. And people thought that this was bullshit over 100 years ago. But you come to 2021 and they look at me like I'm crazy when I say we got to have independent parties. But here's where they really get into the gangster nature of the Democratic Party, because they talk about, as we get ready to get into this discussion, they talk about how the Democratic Party made sure to offer itself up as the buffer for independents seeking to break away from that particular party and establish some type of populist party. And here's a great quote. This came from Jack London in his book, The Iron Heel. Oh, this is great. You pompously call yourselves Republicans and Democrats. There is no Republican Party. There is no Democratic Party. There are no Republicans nor Democrats in this house. You are lick spitters and panderers, the creatures of the Plutocracy. Yeah.
Wow. Now, if that ain't clear, all you motherfuckers are working for the Plutocracy together.
I was like, damn, okay. So these are great things that they bring out in the documentary that we got to research. This author, Lance Selfa, that white boy broke down. He got a book called The Democrat, A Critical History. And he gets into breaking this thing down about the independent party push and the populist party concept. And the Democrats went to them and fused them under that umbrella. Well, who is that today? AOC.
Right, progressive.
So the Democrats to trick them into believing that they can accomplish all this bullshit that they talking about underneath the Democratic Party, when if they understood what Jack London said, you pompously call yourselves Republicans and Democrats. There is no Republican Party. There is no Democratic Party. There are no Republicans or Democrats in this house. You are lick spitters and panderers, the creatures of Plutocracy. So AOC, you full of shit, because you know goddamn well you ain't doing nothing but selling out the Latinos and the black folks, but they know the Negroes will never figure the shit out in the first place.
But Craig, let's go to Bernie Sanders. Democrats would have never nominated him as a presidential. One, he's not a Democrat. And so I was saying, why people don't see the fact that he will never be a Democratic nominee.
Exactly.
That's crazy.
Exactly, brother. Exactly.
Because people don't know how to think.
They don't know how to think.
Right.
And they don't understand the system.
And so that's where it's at. There's another guy we got to research named Howard Zinn. Zinn said the Democratic Party's focus is to stamp out the concept of independent parties.
Right. Yeah.
Huh.
That's true.
She just gave an example. They
Yeah.
moved Bernie Sanders into the Democratic Party. They ain't changing. My point
No,
is,
they're not.
these
They're
guys
not.
have been doing this shit for over 100 plus goddamn years. We just ain't figured it out.
And that's why we said, Brother Craig, you got to give the white boy credit.
Can I interject? In 2004, when I was on the state central committee, you know, they were considering how they needed to reshape the electorate what between the two parties. Do they go to a like a England where England has its setup or establishment? So Bernie Sanders, that was a test.
Yep.
And I kept saying, y'all ain't gonna do that. I kept saying it to me, they're not gonna do that because I knew they were not gonna release power to the masses because so many people were voting independent. I said, I know, I said, they're not gonna lose control. And for them to even, they created an illusion
Yep.
of the third party will have a voice. They created that
Yep.
illusion. And
Yep.
then they usurped the independence in the what? Coming into the Democratic tent.
Yep.
They played it.
Brilliant. I mean, I'm talking about brilliant.
That's right. That's right.
And now they use Donald Trump in order to now make the appeal to the hardcore followers of the Republican Party to now damn near destroy the Republican Party. It's been a gangster game throughout. But again, we're not even, hell, we ain't even in the parking lot of the stadium. We ain't in the stadium. We ain't even in the parking lot. We down the street.
Brother, we might not be in the same city of the parking lot of the stadium. And that's why I say we keep losing. We're not even on the battlefield.
Exactly. Another good thing they pointed out was that Hitler's game plan, his whole white supremacist, racist agenda and platform was based on the cultural assimilation program in America. That's where the white folks assimilated the natives in order to destroy native culture. So that's something that we really got to focus on. Then, of course, they get into the breakdown of eugenics. So all of the big names back then, the DuPonts, the Rockefellers, the Fords, now you come up to the day, you got the goddamn Bill Gates. All this shit is just a continuation. They don't stop. The movie that they recommend that's a pro-eugenics film, I'm gonna find that goddamn movie. It was in 1917 called Black Stork. So I'm gonna look at that, but it's a pro-eugenics film. They bring that out. And that's why I say this movie is power-packed with information. John Stuart Mill in 1848, and I put on this quote, this is the reason that we need more entrepreneurship. This is what he said. I cannot think it probable that working people will be permanently contented with the condition of laboring for wages as their ultimate state, to work at the bidding and for the profit of another without any interest in the work, is not even when wages are high a satisfactory state for human beings. So they're saying even when wages may be high, he found it very difficult to believe that working class people would be cool with going to work and having the goddamn profits go to somebody else that ain't even doing no work at the job. But that is where entrepreneurship comes in. If you got an issue with that shit, start your own shit. Now, back then, it might have been an issue, but it ain't no goddamn issue now. Okay? Now they came in and they're talking about the most profound party of all at that particular time. And this is where we come in with the industrial workers of the world, the IWW. And they were focused on using anarchy, but not from a violent standpoint, so to speak, but they were a radical labor union. So this is where Martin Luther King gets a lot of his shit from the boycotts and all of that stuff, but they were completely anti-capitalism. So their goal was to overthrow capitalism. But again, they weren't focusing on entrepreneurship. So I thought that was very interesting, but they called themselves the Wobblies. So that's a very big point. Also got to research something in the film in 1912. There was a mob attack against some of the leaders of the anarchist movement. And that's when the goddamn anarchists said, fuck it, we're taking off the gloves. So they created a concept called the propaganda of the deed. And here's what this says. The insurrectional fact destined to affirm socialist principles by deed is the most efficacious means of propaganda. It is therefore necessary to destroy with violence. Since one cannot do otherwise, the violence which denies the means to workers. So they basically saying, since we can't goddamn me get no civility, act right in equity, we're gonna teach your ass by doing the deed. We're gonna start killing motherfuckers. We're gonna start
you know, Brother Craig, that's not necessarily strategically thinking and being realistic a bad thing, but you cannot do that without spirituality, without culture, without understanding of the system. You know, because they got to know that you are just as serious as they are. So there's a place for that, but it got to be in the right place with the right people.
Exactly, brother. As a matter of fact, I put here, it said the tactics of the so-called nonviolent civil rights movement were copied from the various labor movements, especially the IWW. And when you look at that video, Plutocracy, you'll see that. The author, Andrew Cornell, he wrote a book called Unruly Equality. That's something that we need to pick up as well. But their whole premise, Francis, Mike, and Tari, and welcome, Brother Mike, to the discussion. Their whole premise was, and this is true, actions speak louder than words. But like Brother Tamani is saying, the anarchist action, there was no way you were going to win with that concept. But you see some very interesting things that did happen. But they were labor advocates with a gangster initiative. And their whole thing was to kill the goddamn plutocrat, literally. And they accomplished that shit to some degree. And their game plan was, they thought that since the average person was discontent with their situation, if they saw a few people killing these motherfuckers, they would then rise up and join forces with them, kind of like what John Brown tried to do in the Battle of Harper's Ferry. But what you don't understand when you're dealing with that, the average goddamn person ain't willing to die. Yep. The average person ain't willing. The average person don't even want to do no damn push-up. Shit. Don't do no goddamn sit-up.
Yeah, that's right. That whole concept of we got to bring all of us together. That shit'll never happen. It never has been, never will be. And you better know who you're rolling with, because you fuck around and look back and you by yourself.
Exactly, bro. So they thought they would encourage more grassroots gangsterism with the labor movement. And what I said was, similar to Tamani, this was unsuccessful, but this is a key piece to the puzzle. So, because there is a place for this shit, but it got to be strategically directed. So now I want y'all to pay attention at the 1 hour and 21 minute mark. because they focused on some of the successful assassinations by the grassroots gangster anarchists. And I did put there awesome, because they did take some motherfuckers out. Real talk. And one of the big ones was a goddamn Negro cracker named Lucy Carson. She was married to a cracker who was a former Confederate racist, but he read some shit on anarchy and he started, having sex with her, so he got flipped into a different philosophy. But they ass was about that life. They was about killing up some folks. And then Emma Goldman, she was another one. She was a straight up gangster, her and her dude. And this is brought out in a major, major way. This is something that really isn't discussed with Black grassroots people, but we really need to take some time and look at this anarchist, not for us to adopt the concept of it, but for you to see where some of these people who are with the Black Lives Matter movement, Antifa, that's what Antifa comes out of, this anarchist tradition.
Right.
So there's a basis for it, a history for it in America. So that way, when you turn on your TV, it's not crazy.
Hey, Brother Craig, to that point of labor, the anarchists killing people, I'm telling you, man, that documentary, killing Jimmy Hoffa, labor, Jimmy Hoffa, the anarchists, the mob, killing plutocrats, the assassination of John F. Kennedy. I'm telling you, brother, it's there. Everything we're saying in this movie, it is there, and that was in the 60s. And of course, it's still happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because the mob got down with the CIA to try and kill goddamn Fidel Castro many times. But because he built his house from the foundation up, he had a squad around him in his geographic space that made those assassination attempts. And there was multiple unsuccessful.
Exactly, brother. And that's why I'm always preaching about not focusing on trying to build a house from the roof down,
yes, sir,
foundation up, because this is going to happen. Now, the key, as we come to a close, the key Antifa, I say Antifa, the key anarchist hit was done by a cat by the name of Leon Zolci in 1901. This cat was mad at Andrew Carnegie when Carnegie sold his railroad interest to, I forget, one of the other plutocrats. And when he sold his railroad interest, this is what made Carnegie the richest cracker in the world at the time. So this cat, Leon Zolci, he lost his job. So he was an anarchist. So he came up with the game plan of killing the goddamn president. Check this out now. I didn't know this, Francis, but who was the president? How did Teddy Roosevelt become the president of the United States?
Oh, I don't know.
He became the president.
McKinley was assassinated. McKinley was assassinated
by this dude named Leon Zolci. And Zolci was an anarchist. And so he killed William McKinley, and the whole thought process of the anarchists was, let's kill McKinley because Teddy Roosevelt was trying to put policies against the goddamn monopolies, the corporate monopoly. So they thought in their limited scope that if they killed McKinley and then Roosevelt becomes president, he would then transform capitalism. Well, you know what happened. Roosevelt, he did a little bit of anti-corporate shit, but at the end of the day, Guess who we went after? The goddamn anarch. Because Roosevelt don't want to die. Shit, Roosevelt know what time it is. Okay? He got down with the goddamn corporate structure. Because he was not grassroots. And that's why I say a lot of these guys, when they're coming up with these theoretical positions, by not being a part of this whole thing from those 6 pillars of empowerment, spiritually, culturally, educationally, economically, socially, and politically, your theories really aren't well vetted, and they ain't gonna work, okay? And so Emma Goldman, the film talks about they wanted her to denounce Leon Zalsey, and she wouldn't, and she referred to President McKinley as the president of the money team. But this is the game that we're in. So again, as a grassroots advocate, you got to have a corporate mindset of entrepreneurship, because otherwise, ain't no way you're gonna be able to navigate. And so they go through all of that, and now is when they really get into discussing how now law enforcement was really used. It was elevated from the metropolitan law enforcement of police. The robber barons, the money people, got tired of putting money into the private detective agencies like the Pinkertons and whatnot. So they said, you know what? We need the goddamn state to cover the cost on this shit, because we bringing the job. So now Teddy Roosevelt, he lays the foundation to enact what? Private public law enforcement agencies funded with goddamn tax dollars. And what law enforcement agency is that? The damn state police. But it's just so
defund the police. It goes full circle.
That's right. That's right.
But it's just so gangster.
Man, what I tell you? Yeah.
This is gangster, man. Teddy Roosevelt helps to create the legislation that lays the foundation for the state police to be created, so that they can bash the heads in of the goddamn labor movement on behalf of the goddamn corporation.
Gangster.
And the only reason that Teddy Roosevelt became president is because the anarchists thought he was a friend of labor, which he was a friend to their punk ass. So they did the hit on McKinley, because they knew McKinley was in the pocket of the damn corporation. But damn, Roosevelt turned out to be a turncoat too.
Self-preservation.
Self-preservation, exactly.
Right, self-preservation.
Self-preservation. Elizabeth Gurley Flynn, she was another revolutionary person with the International Workers Union, so you definitely check her out. Joseph Ettor, he was a IWW leader, and this is a quote he had: "You cannot win," and this is what he said to the damn anarchists, and this is to Money's point. "You cannot win by fighting with your fists against men that are armed, or against the militia, but you have a stronger weapon than they have. You have the weapons of labor, and they cannot beat you down if you stick together." See, that's the whole thing. We can win the game with unity, but the problem is, without spirituality and right culture, you cannot establish unity in order to accomplish the task. But the beautiful thing is, I was going through this documentary, there is no young labor movement going on of grassroots people. So in terms of the Black Gold Nation, Brother Tamani,
as we talk about the 6 pillars of empowerment, our focus is on labor, but not for employment of labor, but for labor, as me and Francis just said, to now unify around entrepreneurship. And when you can unify around entrepreneurship, you can now mobilize the labor at the grassroots level to then go against the corporate barons in the 21st century and beyond.
And Brother Craig, you can not only mobilize that labor, but you can use that labor to control, protect, build up that geographic space that you now control. That labor, those people, the foundation, the grassroots, that's everything. So if you can connect with that, help that be better than that geographic space, that's your goddamn 21st century Black Wall Street.
There you go.
You ain't got to go buy no land nowhere else and build up from the ground up. That's ridiculous.
And you ain't got to get delusional in the believing that you're going to go to goddamn Africa.
You don't have to do all that.
You're stupid.
You ain't escaping these white folks, right?
Wherever you go, there they are.
Here's a book I want y'all to look at. Guns, Germs, and Steel by Jared Diamond. It talks about guns, germs, and steel.
Okay.
By Jared Diamond. And it's the fate of human societies. And it shows how where, let's say in Africa, they use bows and arrows and whatever, but guns came in. And then in the Revolutionary Wars, they put germs in. Well, that's what we're dealing with now. We're dealing with this germ. That's what they're going to do and use on people now to take over human society and how to transform it. But he has a good depiction of how this has been done over the years, and who finances it? The plutocrats.
The plutocrats.
Sister Francis, can you put that book title in the chat, please, so I can capture it?
All right.
Along with the author. Thank you.
All right, no problem.
And the last 2 points, and this just gets to how diabolical the plutocrats are. William Madison Wood, who was the owner of the American Wooling Company, and John Barron, they were so gangster, they were trying to destroy the IWW Union. They hired a white boy named Ernest Pittman to set up explosives to frame the IWW leadership under the concept of anarchy, although IWW wasn't about violence. But Pittman was caught and he confessed to the crime. His punk ass went to jail, but the goddamn William Madison Wood and John Barron did not. So I said, this is a great example of the diabolical nature of these goddamn plutocrats. And lastly, I said government serves the interests of the corporate barons. However, labor can leverage economic justice and equity through a unified interest coalition, and the entities who must be able to do that are on this phone call, and the people that we have to influence. I am Mike. I'm going to send you the link to Plutocracy, and inside of that link, it has all 5 episodes. Today, we just finished discussing episode number 2 or part 2, but I suggest taking your notepad out and taking notes, going back and researching and studying, because I'm telling you, between these 5 episodes, it lays out everything. And then when you get, like the book that Francis just recommended, Guns, Germs, and Steel, that now gives us the ammunition when we're having discussion with our people as to the historical structure of how these white folks have put this thing together in order to use labor for their diabolical deeds. And with that, that concludes our presentation this morning. I open it up to any questions that you guys may have.
Well, Craig, I want to say thank you for inviting me. This was a great discussion. It goes in line with what a lot of Black people are thinking, but just don't have a good concept on what to do because they're feeling the pain economically. And that's what happens in our society when you see populism and people are doing outbursts, both on no matter what culture. What's happening? The plutocrats are controlling the resources
Yep,
and creating scarcity among the people, and the people don't know where it's coming from. So what happens? You have outbursts.
yep,
And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing outbursts because the root cause is economics and they're pulling the rug from under them. But
yep.
thank you for the invite.
Yes, indeed. And the other thing that you hit on earlier in the call, Francis, and by the way, Francis, our other Xavier colleague, Mike Gunn, he's on the phone. He's Xavier alum out in California, one of my good partners who was at Xavier during the time that we were there. The other point that you hit on earlier, they create the scarcity of the
Mm,
economic resources and they create the fear.
correct.
And those two things between scarcity and fear, they know they can yo-yo the people, ping pong them virtually any way possible. And like I said, unfortunately, and I can't blame Malcolm or Martin or Garvey for this, but it needs to be duly noted that, both of them were, 39 years old when they were
Hmm.
assassinated, and neither one of them had ever been in corporate America. And the only one that had ever sold anything, which Malcolm sold drugs and sex, in terms of his business. But neither one of them had been in corporate America. And so entrepreneurship was really not a big thing. King did have some understanding of politics. Malcolm had a better understanding of it on a grassroots level because he had the mentorship coming from Reverend Adam Clayton Powell, Congressman. But at the
Hmm.
end of the day, none of them, and this goes for Malcolm, King, Garvey, none of them understood the entrepreneurial business side of the equation. And in
Correct.
order for us to really understand that, you got to look at, go back to the late 1700s, early 1800s, and look at the most phenomenal grassroots revolutionary when it comes to economics, and that was Paul Cuff,
Okay.
because he's the person who laid the foundation for what Garvey would later call the Back to Africa movement. But the Back to Africa movement had already been started by Paul Cuff and Richard Allen of the AME Church, and Paul Cuff was a wealthy brother based on building ships with an
Hmm.
all-black shipping company. And it was Paul Cuff who initiated the Back to Africa movement initially in Sierra Leone, and very few people know about him. And he's the one that had the understanding of the money. Garvey had the understanding of the marketing of mobilizing mass groups of people. And Malcolm
Right.
understood the grassroots um, side of the equation, and King understood the public policy side to some degree, although the public policies he enacted helped to fuck us up in terms of that civil rights legislation. But the voting rights legislation was on point, and the housing rights legislation was on point. But all the two of those have laid the foundation for a lot of the systemic issues that still plague us to this day.
But King was not, he wasn't intimidating.
No, he was
So right, and so because of his mild manneredness, he was easier for white people to work through, uh,
exactly.
and that's how they were able to infiltrate black politics as we
Exactly.
know it today. Hmm. Hmm.
Exactly. Anybody else? All right. So I'll send this out to you guys so you have. Francis already has it, but I'll send it out to everybody else so you can get the better version of it of the series versus what's on YouTube. And with that, I turn it back over to Brother Johnny.
All right. As always, we want to thank you guys for taking time out of your Saturday morning to be here, be a part of this movie review. Keep in mind that every single thing we do, everything we do is about bringing our people together to find the right people so we can make some things happen to move our people forward. As I always say in our the Revolutionary Code show at the end, we're not here to just entertain you. We're not here to just educate you. We're trying to get you to do something. All this information is in an attempt to educate you, inform you, so that we will do something. If we don't do something, then all of this stuff does not matter. So always remember two things. No one can do everything, but if everyone does something, everything will get done. And absolutely, always, always, always remember that nothing is more sacred. Not me, not you, not your kids, not my kids, not your family, not my family. Nothing is more sacred than the liberation and salvation of Black people, because if Black people don't make it, all those people that you love will not make it because they are connected to the Black group. But if we take care of the Black group first, if we take care of the tribe and the race first, and we build a nation with power in many nations around this planet, then our people will also be taken care of because they are connected to that group that now has power. So with that, God bless you. I appreciate it, and we'll see you in 2 weeks for the next movie review. Take care.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Good.